The 2000s era of Sonic was such a strange one to grow up in. I may be biased towards it, but even I can't deny that Sonic Team was doing some questionable things with the franchise on home consoles. By 2005, they were taking the colorful world of Sonic and turning it into a darker, edgy world with guns? It's easy to forget that while the console games were struggling to find an audience, the handhelds were living it up with some of the best 2D Sonic games to date. DIMPS were essentially keeping Sonic afloat thanks to their handheld outings. The Advanced Trilogy was a sign of their pretty strong understanding of what Sonic was about. They may have fumbled a bit, but the trilogy of games were loved by many, myself included. Except you, Advance 2. You know what you did. While Sonic Advance 3 was in development, Nintendo released their next cutting-edge handheld. Now sporting dual screens, the bottom of which being a touchscreen, the Nintendo DS hit store shelves, taking the world by storm. It was more powerful than the GBA, allowing for 3D graphics, better sound chips, and a slew of features. Heck, it even lets you play Game Boy Advance games on it. The DS will always be an important part of my life. The amount of hours I spent on the handheld and all of its revisions throughout the 2000s are some of my favorite memories in all of gaming. New Super Mario Bros., Kirby Canvas Curse, Zelda Spirit Tracks, The World Ends With You, and of course, the topic of today's video, Sonic Rush. Sonic Rush was DIMPS' first outing on the Nintendo DS, and with it, a lot had changed about the 2D formula. We'll talk about that more in a bit, but first, I have to share my history with the game. During the 2000s and early 2010s, I used to go on weekend trips to see my grandparents. Every time I went, I was taken to Toys R Us, rest in peace. When my grandma took me there, she'd often let me get a few toys and sometimes even a game. Being the avid Sonic fan that I am, I would usually look for Sonic-related items. It's thanks to her that I have a lot of my old Sonic Jazzwares figures. On one of those trips in 2005, I happened to see Sonic Rush sitting on the shelf. I didn't even know the game existed, but I knew I had to get it, and get it I did. I took Rush with me and finished it that weekend with so much as a second thought. Rush has a lot of memories tied to it, and as such, I do have a slight bias towards it. I will, however, do my best to not let it show and be rational as we take a look at the game. Let's see if Sonic Rush is still worth playing almost 20 years later. Sonic Rush! Sonic Rush wastes no time throwing the player right into the action. There are no story beats thrown at you before you start the first level. Sonic still retains his signature speed. You can still jump, homing attack, air dash, and spin dash just like before. What sets Rush apart from the previous entries is something you'll immediately take notice of. On the left side of the screen, you'll notice a meter. This meter can be filled up in many different ways, defeating enemies, capsules, and performing tricks by mashing the jump button while airborne. Once the meter is full, with the simple press of the Y button, Sonic will blitz off at incredible speeds with a boost. You'll be invincible while in boost mode, so go nuts and tear your way through stages. After making your way through the first two acts of the game, you'll come face to face with Dr. Eggman, who mentions a plan to obtain an ultimate power. After defeating him, he'll flee, leaving behind a strange gem. Sonic reaches for the mysterious gem before let me introduce you to the newest member of the Sonic cast, Blaze the Cat. This purple feline will be your other playable character, and we'll get into the differences in her gameplay in a bit. Blaze has her own story, and it is required to be completed along with Sonic's in order to see the true ending. So now that we've got both of our characters, why don't we take a deeper dive into the story. Sometime before the events of the game, Dr. Eggman learned how to cross over to another dimension, where he learned of yet another set of 7 mystical jewels that rival the power of the Chaos Emeralds, the Soul Emeralds. These emeralds come from a dimension known as the Soul Dimension, the very same dimension that Blaze resides in. Not only is Blaze a resident of the Soul Dimension, but she's the princess of the land and the guardian of the Soul Emeralds. Blaze gives chase to Eggman back to Sonic's dimension where she awakens, lost and confused. Blaze, realizing what has transpired, must track down Eggman and retrieve the Soul Emeralds back from him. If the Soul Emeralds remain in Sonic's dimension, there will be dire consequences. But Blaze is lost and not sure where anything in this world is. Thankfully for her, there's a smart rabbit girl watching her from the distance. Cream the rabbit has returned and introduces herself to the reclusive princess. She begrudgingly accepts Cream's help to find her way around in order to retrieve the soul emeralds, but not without stopping by her house for tea with Vanilla. Blaze's personality is on perfect display throughout the adventure. She is a woman of few words, often keeping her thoughts internally as she assesses everything around her. It gives people the wrong impression, as she often comes off as rude and uninterested in what they have to say. But the young Cream is a smart girl and knows what Blaze is really like. It's her kindness and ability to read people that proves invaluable in Blaze's character arc. Cream encourages Blaze to find Sonic and ask him for help. As he is usually the one to find the Chaos Emeralds, he should be able to help Blaze find the Soul Emeralds. Blaze refuses help and insists on finding the emeralds by herself. Back with Sonic, he meets up with Tails and questions what Eggman was talking about with this ultimate power, and just who this mysterious cat girl is. After catching back up with Eggman, it's revealed that the man Sonic has been pursuing is not the Dr. Eggman he's known, but an alternate dimension version of the Good Doctor, Dr. Eggman Mega. After defeating him, leaving him to flee the scene, Sonic and Tails head for Tails' lab to find out what's going on, only to find out that the space-time continuum is starting to tear apart. If the two dimensions merge together, reality as they know it will cease to exist, destroying both Sonic and Blaze's worlds. With little choice, it's up to Sonic to stop Dr. Eggman Mega and find out more about Blaze in order to restore the dimensions to their original state. Throughout the two stories, Sonic and Blaze will encounter Amy and Knuckles. Knuckles, having been mistaken into thinking Blaze had a Chaos Emerald, barricade himself into a mountain where Sonic and Tails will promptly save him. Amy's jealousy for Sonic's interest in another girl leads to where he may find Blaze, but Amy's more understanding of the situation once Cream properly explains it to her. It's with these interactions that we can see Blaze's emotional barriers start to break apart. She may be brash with Knuckles and continue to refuse help from Sonic, but Amy and especially Cream manage to get her to rethink the way she approaches situations, and even smile. It's thanks to an encounter she had with Sonic that she realizes that he's trying to stop the space-time continuum rift, and although she acknowledges this, she still refuses his help. By the 7th zone, Sonic and Blaze reach their respective doctors that they've been pursuing. Blaze, by this point, is ready to destroy the doctors, and Sonic, being a more rational thinker, tries to calm her down. Blaze, already enraged, takes this anger out on Sonic, telling him he'll never understand how she feels, culminating in a boss fight between the two. Regardless of who wins, Sonic finally gets through to Blaze, understanding that she had a rough life, and that she's taken on more than she can handle. He extends a helping hand to her, and finally, Blaze comes to realize how in over her head she really is. The two finally properly introduce themselves before regrouping. Depending on which story you're playing, this situation will play out differently. If you're playing as Sonic, he goes after Dr. Eggman Mega, as Blaze is still weakened from their fight. If you're playing as Blaze, she goes after Dr. Eggman, as he's kidnapped Cream. She declares to save her friend before going after him. After a lengthy but fun boss fight, both doctors will go down. Sonic will return to his friends, and Blaze will save Cream, where the two have an exchange about how they are true friends. The story will conclude in the true ending, but we'll come back to that toward the end. Let's talk gameplay. Sonic Rush is another 2D platformer, like the Advanced trilogy before it. The game will take you through 7 unique zones, spanning 2 acts each, culminating in a boss fight at the end of each. Sonic and Blaze will tear their way through various different unique levels with distinct gimmicks to them. Water Palace has spinning wheels that can send you up and down depending on how fast you zip into them. Night Carnival has a light system that activates moving platforms and rails with the press of a button. Altitude Limit has these ascending platforms that you must navigate between tight corners and an entire hang glider section. Each zone is visually different from the previous, and with the use of the DS's dual screens, you'll be bouncing between each screen as you blast through each zone. The backgrounds and vibrant colors make for visually stunning levels. My favorite of the bunch from a visual standpoint is Night Carnival, with its bright neon lights and heavy use of purple and orange. Sonic and Blaze may be going through the same zones, but DIMPS knew how to make the two playthroughs distinct enough. The order in which you play each zone is different between the two. While the two will always go to the same zone last, the order is otherwise different. Leaf Storm may be Sonic's first zone, but it's Blaze's second. Night Carnival is Blaze's first, but Sonic's fourth. Sonic and Blaze have some slight variations in their gameplay as well. Sonic is faster than Blaze and has the homing attack to take down enemies, but Blaze has rocket boots that allow her to jump higher and send herself higher and further when doing air tricks with the R button, as well as having the ability to hover in the air. Between the two, I prefer playing as Blaze. Her air tricks and ability to hover make platforming a lot easier and allow her to take huge shortcuts that Sonic otherwise could not. The distinct difference between the two doesn't just stem from the level order or gameplay, but even the music. The melodies of each zone may be the same, but there are distinct differences in each track depending on whether you're playing as Sonic or Blaze. Take Leaf Storm for example. Listen to the difference in instruments between the two. Sonic Rush brings back Terukio Nakagawa to compose the Blaze versions of each zone, and brings a new face to the series. Hideki Nakagawa of Jet Set Radio fame and questionable Twitter posts composed everything else. You would think that Nakagawa's style would feel very out of place in a Sonic game, and yet it works so well. Given the change in gameplay and focus on style and spectacle, his work shines brightly in this game. You know what time it is? Time to highlight some favorites. Night Carnival, also known as Ska Cha Cha, is one of the catchiest themes in the game. The vocals backing the song is nice, but the standout part is when it breaks down into this jamming melody. Mirage Road, also known as Ethno Circus, has this very bouncy feeling to the song, with a scratchy melody, backed by some vocals that's impossible not to bob your head to. But by far, my absolute favorite level theme in the game goes to Deadline, also known as What You Need, specifically the Blaze Mix. What You Need is already a contender for one of the best songs in the series, but the violin backing Blaze's rendition makes for one of my favorites in the entire series.
Don't stop, you proceed.
While I have been positive about the game, there are issues that I can't turn a blind eye to. The level design has serious issues. There are far too many do-or-die situations where you'll be caught off guard by an obstacle you couldn't see when going at extreme speeds, most notably, crushing blocks and bottomless pits. Night Carnival has several issues with a ton of bottomless pits that you'll likely fall down, including this one, where if you're moving too fast to realize there's a button you need to press to turn on a rail, you'll veer off the edge and die instantly. There's a chase sequence at the end of one act where you're being chased by a giant boulder, and even while holding the boost button, I died to it. The worst level in the game, in my opinion, is Altitude Limit. The entire zone is in the sky, so you know what that means. 3 sky zones that DIMPS has plagued with bottomless pits that are difficult to avoid, even when you know what to do. Those ascending platforms I mentioned before are also over death pits and are very easy to mess up if you get hit by an off-screen enemy or crash into a wall while trying to weave your way through the tight crevices. Several of the zones also love to throw you into locked rooms where you must defeat every enemy in the room in order to escape. Why the Sonic series was so fixated on forced combat during this era is beyond me. It's not like defeating enemies is difficult, but it brings the pace down to a crawl, and you often have to wait for enemies to spawn before you can take them down. And in the case of certain zones, like Huge Crisis, they're over bottomless pits, in rooms with crushing blocks, and even platforms that fall when you land on them, meaning that you have to be quick, but careful in a game that focuses on reaching high speeds. This does not work. And while we're on the subject of the combat, we may as well talk about the boss fights, and why they're the low point of the game. Each zone has one boss fight. Unlike before, they have actual health bars that show you how many hits they have left, fully displayed on the bottom screen, along with your companion who will cheer you on. It's an adorable addition, but these bosses are atrocious. The biggest offense they have is how long they go on for. These aren't like the Advanced Trilogy where you can just spam hits in seconds and take them down. No, instead you must wait for an opening, often having to dodge several attacks before you get a chance to hit them. And in the case of Altitude Limits, man, this zone just keeps delivering. You have mere milliseconds to get a hit in. The designs of the bosses are very cool looking, and not all of them are terrible. I quite enjoy the Night Carnival one. You're in a circular arena, and your goal is to hit one end of this weight that causes the cockpit on the other end to lower itself. You'll run over there quickly and get a hit in. A boss like this is a lot of fun, but most of the others are an endurance challenge of your patience. None of them are hard, they're just drug out. The sound balancing is also pretty bad. I'd love to enjoy these amazing level tracks, but I'm too busy performing tricks to fill my boost gauge, which often means that this is all I'm going to be hearing during gameplay. Yeah, that's okay. Who needs eardrums anyways? Let's get back on track though. We have a game to finish. The last thing that needs to be done is to fight the true final boss. That means that it's time to discuss how to collect the Chaos Emeralds. Unlike before though, we have 14 emeralds to collect this time. We need both the Chaos and Soul Emeralds to fight the true final boss. Luckily for us, Blaze makes collecting the Soul Emeralds very easy. In order to collect her emeralds, you simply have to defeat each boss at the end of the 7th zone. You'll be treated to a satisfying cutscene of Blaze quite literally kicking the emerald out of Eggman, sending him off Team Rocket style. But what about Sonic? How do we get to the special stage? Well, I'm glad you asked. DIMPS has shown some real growth since the days of Advance 2. With Advance 3, they made a system that I praised, but stated that it wasn't perfect. Well, they definitely made the perfect system now. Scattered throughout each zone are these spinning pulleys. Sonic must grab a hold of one, and by holding down the boost meter, he'll begin spinning at extreme speeds. At the cost of 1 full bar of boost, Sonic opens a portal to the special stage before zipping inside. What awaits you is a returning style of special stage, the half pipe introduced all the way back on Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Your goal is to collect a set number of rings during 2 halves of the half pipe before crossing checkpoints. As long as you have enough rings, you'll collect the emerald. You'll have to dodge various spike balls scattered everywhere while also dodging and countering enemies. Being that this is a DS game, DIMPS decided that this would be where they would use the gimmick of the touchscreen. By holding your stylus over Sonic, you will control where he goes by simply sliding the stylus around the screen. This works incredibly well as the special stages are designed with this smooth control in mind. They will expect you to make twitchy movements to navigate past all obstacles. You can even fling Sonic over the edge to collect rings above the half pipe. Sometimes you'll even find springs that will send you into the air. You'll have circles with numbers inside of them displayed on the screen in which you'll draw a line in numerical order to score extra rings. You'll have a limited time to do so you'll have to be very quick about it. They'll start off simple, but gradually get more difficult and add more numbers with each stage. You know what the best part is? If you somehow fail to complete a special stage, as I purposely did here on the last one and definitely did not mess up, you can just grab a hold of the pulley and try again. And they're usually by springs, meaning that if your boost meter is empty, you can just spam tricks to fill it up. It took 4 games, but DIMPS finally made a special stage system that complemented the special stages themselves, meaning that I got all the Chaos Emeralds naturally as I played the game, and didn't need to backtrack to collect any. Good on you, DIMPS! With all 14 emeralds in hand, you'll unlock the final story.
Sonic and Blaze!
Despite the defeat of the 2 Eggmen and retrieving both sets of the emeralds, Blaze has noticed that the dimensions are still merging and she has not returned to her own. The 2 Eggmen arrive and explain that the Chaos and Soul Emeralds have a magnetic pull to one another, meaning that by the user's control, they can pull or repel one another, like the North and South Pole. Since Blaze does not know how to use the Soul Emerald's power, she can't use them to send herself back to her dimension. The 2 doctors ambush her and steal the power of the Soul Emeralds before leaving the wounded Blaze. Sonic comes in to try and stop them, but it's too late. Blaze apologizes to Sonic and points out how the Soul Emeralds have lost their luster. Sonic, in true character, tells her not to worry. He assures Blaze that there's no reason to give up. Thanks to the bonds she's made and learning to open up to others, the Soul Emeralds will never lose their power. Everyone gathers around and reassures her. Thanking everyone, Blaze picks herself back up and feels a warmth emit from the Soul Emeralds. Sonic and Blaze utilize the Emerald's power and transform. I'm gonna let this scene play out as it's one of my favorite transformation scenes in the entire series. With Supersonic and Burning Blaze powered up, the 2 give chase to the 2 Eggmen for the final battle.
Too lame, too strong, too lame, too strong, too lame, too strong, too strong, too strong, too lame, too strong, too lame, too strong, too lame, too strong, too strong, too strong.
This is a unique boss as it utilizes both screens to represent the 2 dimensions. Sonic on the top and Blaze on the bottom. You'll start the fight by giving chase at first before catching up with the machine. Sonic will have to use his dash to knock projectiles back at the cockpit. This sounds easier than it actually is. You have to line the spinning projectiles up just right before you can bounce them back, and every few seconds, they fire a stunning laser. Occasionally, the machine will fire a green laser that you can deflect if you're having trouble. After 2 hits, they switch dimensions and you'll take control of Blaze. Blaze has an easier time, as she can charge up a fireball to throw at the cockpit. There is a build-up to the attack, so you will still have to prepare yourself and angle yourself just right in order to hit it. Every 2 hits, you'll switch between the 2. After 4 phases, the music becomes more desperate, and the final phase will require 3 hits before the boss goes down. With the machine weakened and Eggman Nega displaying how unhinged he is, Super Sonic and Burning Blaze charge up for an attack and wreck the machine, causing it to explode, defeating the Eggmen and sending them back to their respective dimensions. Sonic and Blaze are left in the realm between. The two have an exchange explaining how the 2 sets of emeralds cannot coexist in one dimension. Blaze tells Sonic that she must return to hers. Sonic points out how Cream will be sad that she left without a goodbye, to which Blaze comments that it's best for her to leave a stranger just as she arrived. Before she leaves, Sonic bids her farewell and gives her a proper handshake. The dimensions begin to pull apart. As the two cling on to one another, they're finally separated. We get one final shot of Blaze flying off, realizing that her firepower and duty as the guardian of the Soul Emeralds made her push others away. But thanks to Sonic and his friends, she was able to break through her shell and open up to others. This in turn allowed her to control her power and use the Soul Emeralds to save the day. She thanks Sonic for everything before she flies off. The credits roll, ending Sonic Rush. Sonic Rush is the result of a vision DIMPS had for the series that we got to watch grow through the Advanced Trilogy. The team focused more on spectacle and speed rather than platforming. They wanted to tell a story that, at the time, was on par with the adventure games before it. They took some risks with the introduction of Blaze, who, right behind the blue blur himself, is my favorite character of the franchise. She brought her own unique abilities and had a character arc that grew as the player progressed. They learned from their mistakes of the past with collecting Chaos Emeralds and made it not only fun to do, but a lot easier as well. The use of the dual screens was perfect, giving way to more vertical level design. The introduction of the boost a whole 3 years before the 3D games were incorporated was an innovation that had a lasting impact. The level design may not all be great, but they're all beautiful to look at and had some fun gimmicks to each of them. The music is fantastic and unique to this game alone, with melodies I've been humming for almost 20 years. The boss fights are mostly a test of patience, but the final boss is the highlight of the game, ending on a strong note. But what's best about Sonic Rush is that it succeeded. It sold well, incredibly well. Over 1 million copies were sold. DIMPS hit it out of the park once again, and as such, Sega and Sonic Team allowed this success to birth a sequel that would be even more ambitious than the last. We're approaching the end of this retrospective. Next time, we'll be taking a look at the final original game that DIMPS developed for this series, and the last game in this Sonic retrospective. Join me next time for Sonic Rush Adventure.